A gentle walk through a foggy harbor. The rain has been falling softly all evening, and now, as the last light fades from the sky, a lone figure steps out into the mist-wrapped streets of an old harbor town. There is no hurry, no destination that cannot wait until morning, only the quiet pull of the water and the fog that drifts in from the sea. The cobblestones glisten beneath a dim street lamp, and the air smells of salt and rain-soaked wood, of boats rocking gently in their moorings, and the distant, low call of a foghorn that sounds like a lullaby for the harbor itself. Walking slowly along the waterfront, the figure pauses now and then to watch the shapes emerging and dissolving in the fog. A fishing boat tied to a weathered post, a stack of old crates covered in canvas, a sleeping gull tucked beneath its wing on a piling. The rain is so light it feels more like a cool breath against the skin, and the sound it makes on the water is a soft, endless whisper. There are lights in a few windows above the shops, warm and golden, but they do not beckon. They only add to the quietness, the sense that the whole world has turned inward for the night. The walk continues without urgency, the path winding along the edge of the harbor, where the fog grows thicker and the rain falls softer still. Soon even the lights begin to fade behind, and there is only the gentle rhythm of footsteps, the whisper of waves, and the endless, forgiving gray. The cobblestones are smooth beneath the soles of worn shoes, each stone fitted against the next in patterns that have held for 100 years or more. The rain has polished them to a dull shine, and small puddles gather in the low places between them, reflecting nothing but the soft gray of the sky and the diffused glow of distant lamps. The figure walks with hands tucked into pockets, shoulders relaxed, breathing in the cool night air that tastes faintly of the ocean and of rain that has traveled far across open water before arriving here, at this quiet place where the land meets the sea. Along the edge of the harbor, wooden posts rise from the water at regular intervals, their tops wrapped in old rope that has gone dark with age and weather. Some of the posts lean slightly, as if tired from years of holding boats steady against the tide, and barnacles cling to the parts that disappear beneath the waterline when the tide comes in. Now, with the tide somewhere between high and low, the barnacles are visible just above the surface, and small wavelets lap against them with a sound so gentle it is almost not a sound at all, only a rhythm that the ears recognize without effort. The fog moves across the water in slow drifts, sometimes thinning enough to reveal the far side of the harbor where more boats rest in their slips, and sometimes thickening again until even the nearest vessels become only suggestions of shape and shadow. The fishing boats are painted in colors that were once bright reds, and blues and yellows, but the years and the salt have faded them to softer versions of themselves, and in the fog and rain they look almost gray, blending into the water and the sky, as if they are made of the same quiet substance. There is a bench along the walkway, its wooden slats dark with rain, and the figure pauses beside it, considering whether to sit, but does not. Instead, there is only a moment of standing still, watching the water and the fog, listening to the sound of the rain on the harbor and the occasional creak of a boat shifting at its mooring. The foghorn sounds again, far out where the harbor opens to the sea, and its low note hangs in the air for a long moment before fading into the soft hush of the rain. The walkway curves gently along the water's edge, following the natural shape of the harbor, and the figure continues along it, moving at the same unhurried pace, stepping over a coil of rope that someone has left beside a post, passing a small rowboat turned upside down on the stones with oars tucked beneath it. The rain continues to fall, so light that it barely disturbs the surface of the puddles, and the air is cool but not cold. The kind of coolness that feels good after a long day, the kind that invites deep breaths and slow movements. Ahead there is a low building made of old brick, its walls darkened by decades of weather, and a single light burns in a window on the second floor. The light is soft and steady, and it casts a pale glow onto the wet stones below, but it does not reach very far into the fog. The figure walks past the building without looking up, eyes drawn instead to the water, to the way the rain makes small circles on the surface that expand and overlap and disappear again and again in a pattern that is never quite the same but always familiar. The harbor is not entirely silent, but the sounds it holds are all quiet ones. The creak of wood against rope, the soft splash of water against the hulls of boats, the faint rattle of a chain somewhere in the fog, the whisper of rain falling on canvas and stone and water. These sounds do not interrupt the stillness. They are part of it, woven into the fabric of the night so completely that they seem less like sounds and more like the texture of the silence itself. There is no one else on the walkway, no other footsteps, no voices drifting from the buildings or the boats. It feels as though the entire town has gone to sleep early, lulled by the rain and the fog, and the figure is the only one who has chosen to remain awake a little longer, to walk a little farther into the quiet night. But there is no loneliness in this solitude, only a gentle sense of being held by the evening, by the soft rain and the forgiving fog and the endless patience of the water. The path begins to narrow slightly, the buildings on one side giving way to a low stone wall that separates the walkway from the water. The wall is old and uneven, its stones fitted together without mortar in some places, and small plants grow in the cracks between them, their leaves dark and wet with rain. The figure trails fingers lightly along the top of the wall, feeling the coolness of the stone and the dampness left by the rain, and continues walking slowly, steadily, without any thought of turning back. The boats moored along this stretch of the harbor are smaller, simpler dinghies and skiffs with names painted on their sterns in letters that are hard to read in the dim light. Some have oars resting across their seats, and some have small anchors lying in their bows, and all of them rise and fall gently with the movement of the water, a slow breathing rhythm that matches the rhythm of the rain. The figure watches them for a while, standing still beside the wall, and then moves on, passing one boat and then another, each one bobbing quietly in its place. The fog is thicker here, closer to the water, and it softens everything, blurring the edges of the boats and the posts and the distant buildings until the whole world seems made of something softer than solid matter, something that could be reshaped by a breath or a thought. The rain continues, patient and persistent, and the sound it makes is like the sound of time passing, slow and steady and unworried. There is a smell in the air that is hard to name, a mixture of salt and wet wood and the faint mineral scent of the sea, and beneath it all the clean smell of rain on stone. It is a smell that belongs to this place, to this harbor and this night, and breathing it in feels like breathing in the calm itself, drawing it down into the lungs and letting it settle there, soft and cool. The walkway turns slightly, following the curve of the harbor toward a place where the water grows wider and the far shore becomes invisible in the fog. Here, the posts that line the edge of the walkway are farther apart, and the boats are fewer, and there is more space between each small vessel and the next. The figure walks more slowly now, as if the widening of the water has brought a widening of time, a stretching out of the moments until each step lasts a little longer, each breath takes a little more time. A small lamp hangs from a post at the edge of the walkway, its light enclosed in a box of old glass that has gone cloudy with age. The light inside is dim and yellowish, and it casts a small circle of glow onto the wet stones and the edge of the water, but it does not push back the fog, only makes a small warm place within it. The figure pauses beneath the lamp, looking out at the water, at the fog drifting across it, at the shapes of boats that appear and disappear like thoughts rising and fading in a quiet mind. There is no need to move on, but there is no reason to stop either, and after a moment the figure continues, leaving the small circle of light behind and stepping again into the soft gray darkness where the rain falls and the fog wraps everything in its gentle stillness. The sound of footsteps is softer now, as if the cobblestones themselves have grown quieter, and the rhythm is slower, each step placed carefully, thoughtfully, without effort or intention beyond the simple act of walking. The water beside the walkway is calm, barely moving, and the surface is dark and smooth, except for the small disturbances made by the rain. Each drop that falls makes a tiny splash, a brief circle of ripples that spreads outward and vanishes, and there are so many drops falling, so many circles forming and fading, that the surface of the water seems alive with a pattern that is always changing and always the same. The figure watches this for a while, standing still, breathing slowly, and then moves on again, one foot in front of the other, steady and unhurried. Ahead, the walkway passes beneath a low archway made of brick, part of an old building that extends out over the water on thick wooden pilings. The archway is dark, but not completely so, and the figure walks through it without hesitation, feeling the air grow slightly cooler in the shadow, hearing the rain fall on the roof above with a softer, more muffled sound. On the other side of the archway, the walkway opens out again onto the waterfront, and the rain falls as it did before, light and steady, and the fog drifts as it did before, slow and patient. There is a small boat tied to a post just beyond the archway, its hull painted white but grayed by weather and time. The boat rocks gently in the water, and there's a sound of water lapping against its sides, a soft, rhythmic sound that is almost like breathing. The figure stands beside the boat for a moment, resting a hand on the edge of the post, feeling the roughness of the wood and the dampness left by the rain, and then continues along the walkway, leaving the boat behind. The buildings along the waterfront are fewer now, and the spaces between them are wider, filled with stacks of old crates and coils of rope and nets that have been hung on posts to dry, though in this rain they will not dry, only grow heavier with water. The figure passes these things slowly, looking at them without much thought, seeing them as part of the landscape of the harbor, as familiar and unremarkable as the stones beneath foot or the fog in the air. The foghorn sounds again, its low note rolling across the water from somewhere far out at the edge of the harbor where the channel leads to the open sea. The sound is steady and calm, and it does not startle or interrupt only marks the passage of time in a way that feels gentle and reassuring. The figure pauses to listen until the sound fades, and then walks on, moving deeper into the fog, deeper into the quiet. There is a place along the walkway where the stones give way to wooden planks, a small dock that extends out into the water, and the figure steps onto it, feeling the slight give of the wood beneath each step, hearing the soft creak of old boards shifting under weight. The dock is narrow, with a simple railing on one side, and it stretches out into the fog until the end of it is no longer visible, lost in the gray. The figure walks slowly along it, one hand resting lightly on the railing, feeling the smoothness of the wood worn down by years of hands and weather. The rain falls on the water all around the dock, and the sound is different here, more open, less enclosed by buildings and stone. It is the sound of rain falling on open water, a soft hush that fills the air and seems to come from everywhere at once. The figure walks to the end of the dock, or nearly to the end, and stands there, looking out at the water and the fog, seeing nothing but grayness and the faint shapes of boats in the distance, hearing nothing but the rain and the gentle movement of the water beneath the planks. There is a bench at the end of the dock, simple and weathered, and this time the figure sits, lowering down onto the damp wood and settling there, hands resting on knees, breathing slowly. The rain continues to fall, light and steady, and the fog continues to drift, and the water continues to move in its slow, patient way. There is no urgency, no need to be anywhere else, no thought of what might come next. There is only this moment, and the rain, and the fog, and the quiet. Sitting on the bench, the figure watches the water, seeing the way the rain makes patterns on the surface, the way the fog moves in layers, some parts thicker and some parts thinner, all of it in motion, but moving so slowly that it feels almost still. The boats out in the harbor are barely visible now, only suggestions of darkness against the lighter gray of the fog, and they seem far away, as if they belong to another world, a quieter world that exists just beyond the edge of sight. The sound of the rain is constant, a soft background that fills the silence without breaking it, and the figure listens to it, breathing in time with its rhythm, feeling the coolness of the air and the dampness that has settled into clothes and skin. There is no discomfort in this dampness, only a kind of softness, a sense of being part of the rain and the fog and the water, of being held by the night in a way that feels safe and gentle. Time passes, though it is hard to say how much. The light in the sky does not change, remaining that same soft gray that could be twilight or could be full night, and there is no moon visible through the fog, no stars, only the endless gray and the rain that falls through it. The figure sits without moving much, sometimes shifting slightly on the bench, sometimes lifting a hand to wipe rain from a face, but mostly just sitting, watching, listening, breathing. The foghorn sounds again, and then again some time later, each call the same as the last, steady and low and reassuring. The figure listens to each one, counting them without meaning to, though the count does not matter and is soon forgotten. The sound is part of the rhythm of the night, like the rain and the movement of the water, and it adds to the sense of being held in a place that is safe and unchanging. Eventually the figure stands, slowly, feeling the stiffness in legs that have been still for a while, and begins to walk back along the dock toward the walkway. The planks creak softly underfoot, and the railing is cool and damp beneath a trailing hand. The fog has grown thicker, or perhaps it only seems that way now that the figure is moving again, and the far end of the dock is lost in grayness, visible only as a faint suggestion of solidity in the surrounding mist. At the end of the dock, the wooden planks give way again to cobblestones, and the figure steps back onto the walkway, turning to continue along the waterfront in the same direction as before. The rain is still falling, as light as ever, and the air is still cool and damp, and the night is still quiet. Nothing has changed, and there is a comfort in that, a sense that the world will continue to be this way for as long as it needs to be, that there is no rush, no ending, only this slow walking and this gentle rain. The walkway curves again, leading past more buildings, more boats, more stacks of crates and coils of rope. The figure passes them all slowly, looking at each one without hurry, seeing the way the rain has darkened the wood and the canvas, the way the fog has softened the edges of everything. There is a window in one of the buildings with a light burning behind it, and the figure pauses to look at it, seeing the warm glow and the faint shadow of a curtain, but there is no movement inside, no sign of anyone awake, and after a moment the figure moves on. The harbor seems larger now, or perhaps the fog has made it seem that way, stretching out the distances, making the far shore invisible, and the near shore seem farther away than it is. The figure walks along the edge of it, following the curve of the walkway, stepping carefully over a place where the stones are uneven, pausing to look at a small boat that has come loose from its mooring and is drifting slowly toward the edge of the dock. But the boat is in no danger, only drifting gently, and there is nothing to be done about it tonight, so the figure watches it for a moment and then continues on. There is a place where the walkway widens into a small plaza, a space paved with stones that are larger and flatter than the cobblestones of the path. In the center of the plaza, there is a low fountain, though it is not running now, and the basin is filled with rain water instead of the clear water that might flow from the spout in summer. The figure walks across the plaza slowly, hearing the sound of footsteps change slightly on the larger stones, and pauses beside the fountain, looking down at the water that has collected there. The surface of the water in the fountain is dark and still, and the rain falls onto it gently, making small ripples that spread out and overlap. The figure stands there for a while, watching the ripples, listening to the rain, breathing the cool night air. There is a bench beside the fountain, but the figure does not sit, only stands, hands in pockets, looking at the water and the rain and the fog that drifts across the plaza in slow, silent waves. After a time, the figure begins to walk again, crossing the plaza and returning to the walkway on the far side. The path continues along the waterfront, and the figure follows it, moving at the same slow pace, passing more boats, more buildings, more quiet shapes in the fog. The rain continues, as steady and patient as it has been all evening, and the fog continues to drift, and the water continues to move in its gentle, endless way. There is a place where the walkway passes close to the water's edge, and the figure can see down into it, seeing the dark stones on the bottom and the slow movement of seaweed that grows there, swaying with the current. Small fish move in the shallow water, barely visible, and the figure watches them for a moment, seeing the way they move together, turning all at once, as if guided by a single thought, and then drifting apart again. The buildings along the waterfront are dark now, all of them, the lights that were burning earlier having been turned off or left behind. The figure walks past them, seeing the shapes of doorways and windows, the outlines of roofs against the gray sky. But there is no detail, no color, only the soft shapes and the grayness of the fog. The walkway is darker here, with no lamps to light the way, but the figure does not need light, only continues walking, guided by the feel of the stones underfoot and the sound of the water nearby. The foghorn sounds again, closer now, or perhaps only seeming closer because of the way the fog carries sound. The figure stops to listen, standing still in the darkness, hearing the low note roll across the water and fade into the rain. The sound is comforting, familiar, and the figure stands listening until it is gone completely, and then begins to walk again, slowly, steadily, without hurry. There is a stretch of the walkway where the buildings end entirely, and there is only the low stone wall and the water beyond it, and the fog that wraps everything in softness. The figure walks along this stretch slowly, looking out at the water, seeing nothing but grayness and the faint movement of waves, hearing nothing but the rain and the gentle sound of the water against the wall. The air is cool and damp, and it feels good, clean, and fresh, and the figure breathes it in deeply, letting it fill the lungs and settle there. The walkway begins to curve again, turning away from the water slightly, and leading toward a place where a small cluster of buildings stands, dark and silent. The figure follows the curve, moving at the same unhurried pace, and passes the buildings without looking at them closely, seeing only their shapes in the fog and the wet sheen of rain on their walls. Beyond the buildings, the walkway continues, and the figure continues with it, walking deeper into the fog, deeper into the night. There is a sound in the distance, faint and hard to place, a soft creaking that might be a boat shifting in its mooring or a door swinging gently on old hinges. The figure listens to it, trying to find its source, but the fog makes it impossible to tell where the sound is coming from, and after a moment the sound stops, and there is only the rain again and the quiet. The figure walks on, not concerned, not curious, only walking. The rain is so light now that it is almost not rain at all, only a dampness in the air, a coolness that settles on skin and clothes without sound or weight. The fog is thicker, wrapping the walkway in a soft gray that seems to glow faintly with its own light, though there is no source for such light, only the grayness itself. The figure walks through it slowly, feeling the dampness, seeing the grayness, hearing the soft sounds of the harbor that seem to come from far away, even when they are close. There is a place where the walkway narrows again, passing between two buildings that lean slightly toward each other, their walls close enough that the figure could reach out and touch both at once. The passage is dark, darker than the rest of the walkway, and the figure moves through it slowly, feeling the walls on either side without touching them, hearing the rain fall somewhere above, where the roofs nearly meet. On the other side of the passage, the walkway opens out again, and the rain falls as it did before, soft and steady. The harbor is quiet, so quiet that the sound of footsteps seems loud, though they are not, only steady and slow. The figure walks on, passing a small boat that has been pulled up onto the stones and left there, its hull resting on wooden supports, its oars lying beside it. The boat is old, its paint peeling, and the rain has collected in the bottom of it, forming a small pool that reflects the gray sky. The figure looks at the boat for a moment, and then continues walking, leaving it behind. There is a bench along the walkway, not far from the boat. and the figure pauses beside it, considering whether to sit again, but does not. Instead, there is only a moment of standing still, looking out at the water, at the fog that drifts across it in slow, silent waves, at the rain that falls so gently it barely disturbs the surface. The foghorn sounds again, far away, and the figure listens until the sound fades, and then begins to walk again, moving along the walkway at the same slow pace. The buildings along the waterfront are farther apart now, with wide spaces between them, filled with things that are hard to see in the fog stacks of wood, old machinery, piles of nets. The figure passes these things without much notice, eyes drawn instead to the water, to the gentle movement of it, to the way the fog sits on its surface like a blanket, soft and still. The walkway is uneven here, the stones less carefully fitted, and the figure walks more carefully, placing each step with attention, feeling the unevenness underfoot. There is a sound of water dripping somewhere nearby, a steady drip that falls from a roof or a pipe and lands on stone with a soft, regular rhythm. The figure pauses to listen to it, standing still, hearing the drip and the rain and the quiet movement of the water, and then walks on, leaving the sound behind. The fog is everywhere now, so thick that even the nearest buildings are only shapes, and the far shore of the harbor is completely invisible. Lost in the grayness, the walkway turns again, leading toward a place where the water grows wider still, opening out toward the sea. The figure follows the turn, moving slowly, and comes to a place where the walkway ends, or seems to end, at a low wooden barrier that marks the edge of the harbor. Beyond the barrier there is only water and fog, and the sound of waves that are slightly larger here, rolling in from the open sea and breaking gently against the stones. The figure stands at the barrier, hands resting on the damp wood, looking out at the water and the fog and the grayness that seems to go on forever. The rain is falling still, so light that it is hard to feel, and the air is cool and damp and smells of salt and seaweed and rain. The foghorn sounds again, closer now, its low note rolling across the water and fading into the fog, and the figure listens to it, standing still, breathing slowly. There's no need to turn back, but there's nowhere else to go. And after a while the figure does turn, slowly, and begins to walk back along the walkway, retracing the steps that brought this far out into the fog and the rain. The path is the same as it was before, the stones, the buildings, the boats, all of them wrapped in the same soft grayness, the same gentle rain. The figure walks slowly, without hurry, passing the same places as before, seeing them again as if for the first time, or perhaps seeing them differently, now, more softly, more quietly. The rain continues to fall, patient and endless, and the fog continues to drift, and the water continues to move in its slow, gentle way. The figure walks through it all, part of it, held by it, moving at the pace of the rain and the fog and the quiet night. There is no destination, no place that must be reached, only the walking itself, the simple act of moving through the soft gray world of the harbor at night. The buildings pass by slowly, one after another, their windows dark, their doors closed, and the figure passes them without pausing, eyes on the path ahead, or on the water beside the path, or on nothing in particular. The rain is a constant presence, soft and cool, and the fog is a constant softness, wrapping everything in its gentle embrace. The sound of footsteps is steady, a quiet rhythm that blends with the sound of the rain and the water, and the distant foghorn that calls out now and then from the edge of the sea. There is a place where the walkway passes beneath another archway, and the figure walks through it, feeling the air grow slightly cooler in the shadow, hearing the rain on the roof above, and then emerging again into the open air where the rain falls as before. The boats along the waterfront rock gently in their moorings, and the water laps softly against their hulls, and everything is quiet, everything is still. The figure continues walking, slowly, steadily, breathing the cool night air, listening to the rain and the water and the fog. There is no thought of time, no awareness of how long this walking has gone on, only the sense of being here, in this moment, in this place, surrounded by the gentle rain and the soft fog and the endless patience of the water. The walkway stretches on ahead, curving gently along the edge of the harbor, and the figure follows it, one step at a time, slow and steady and calm. The night is deep now, or perhaps it has always been deep, and the grayness of the fog is the same grayness it has been all along, unchanging, eternal. The rain falls, the fog drifts, the water moves, and the figure walks, slowly, quietly, through the soft gray world of the harbor, where there is no hurry, no urgency, only the gentle rhythm of the rain and the endless, forgiving fog. The walkway continues ahead, winding along the waterfront in a path that seems familiar now, though every step reveals the same soft grayness, the same gentle rain. The figure moves without thinking about the movement, feet finding their way over the cobblestones, as if guided by memory or instinct, though there is no need for guidance, only the simple act of placing one foot in front of the other, again and again, in a rhythm that is as steady as the rain itself. There is a stack of wooden crates beside the walkway, covered with a canvas tarp that has grown heavy with rain water. The tarp sags in the middle where water has collected, and a small stream runs from one corner, dripping onto the stones below with a soft, regular sound. The figure pauses to watch the water drip, seeing each drop fall and splash and disappear into a puddle that is formed on the cobblestones, and then continues walking, leaving the sound behind but carrying it in memory, another small rhythm added to the quiet music of the harbor. The boats along this stretch are smaller, simple fishing vessels with nets piled on their decks and buoys hanging from their sides. The nets are dark with water, and the buoys are faded, their colors barely visible in the fog and the failing light. One boat has a small cabin at the stern, and through its window a faint light glows, though whether it is a lamp left burning or only the reflection of some distant light is impossible to tell. The figure looks at it for a moment, wondering without urgency, and then walks on. The air is growing cooler now, or perhaps it only feels that way because the walking has gone on for so long, and the dampness has settled deeper into clothes and skin. But the coolness is not uncomfortable, only a gentle reminder of the rain and the fog and the night that surrounds everything. The figure breathes it in, feeling it in the lungs, tasting the salt and the rain, and continues along the walkway at the same slow pace. There is a place where the stones of the walkway have been worn smooth by years of footsteps and rain and the slow passage of time. The figure walks across this smooth section, feeling the difference underfoot, the way the stones offer less resistance, less texture, only a flat, polished surface that is slick with rain. The walking here requires more care, more attention to balance, and the figure moves even more slowly, placing each step carefully, feeling the smoothness and the slight give of wet stone. Beyond the smooth stones, the walkway becomes rougher again, the cobblestones uneven and fitted together with gaps between them, where rainwater runs in small streams toward the harbor. The figure steps over these streams, watching the water flow, seeing how it finds the low places and follows them down toward the sea. There is something peaceful in watching the water move, something that requires no thought, only observation, and the figure stands for a moment, watching the streams run between the stones before continuing on. The fog has grown thicker still, if such a thing is possible, and now even the nearest buildings are barely visible, only dark shapes that suggest walls and roofs and windows but reveal nothing clearly. The figure walks past them, sensing their presence more than seeing them, guided by the edge of the walkway and the sound of the water nearby. The rain continues to fall, soft and persistent, and the sound of it fills the air like a whisper that never ends, never grows louder or softer, only continues in its gentle, constant way. There is a lamp-post along the walkway, its light dim and flickering slightly, as if the bulb inside is old and near the end of its life. The light it casts is weak, barely reaching beyond the post itself, but it creates a small circle of pale yellow glow on the wet stones, and the figure walks through this circle, feeling for a moment as if passing through a doorway from one gray space to another, though nothing changes except the brief wash of yellow light and then the return to grayness. The harbor spreads out to the left, wide and dark, and nearly invisible in the fog. The water is calm, moving only slightly, and the sound it makes is so soft that it is almost not a sound at all, only a presence, a gentle reminder that the water is there, patient and endless. The figure looks out at it, seeing nothing but fog and darkness, hearing nothing but the rain and the soft movement of waves, and then turns back to the walkway and continues on. There is a small boat tied to a post just ahead, its hull painted green, but faded to a dull gray-green by weather and time. The boat sits low in the water, and rain has collected in its bottom, forming a pool that reflects the gray sky above. A single oar lies across the seats, and a coil of rope rests in the bow, and everything about the boat suggests stillness, a vessel that has not moved in a long time and may not move again for a long time to come. A figure stands beside it, looking down at the rainwater in the hull, seeing the reflection of the sky and the faint outline of the post, and then moves on. The walkway passes close to the water's edge here, and the figure can look down and see the stones beneath the surface, dark and covered with algae that sways gently with the current. Small crabs move among the stones, their movements quick and deliberate, and the figure watches them for a moment, seeing how they scuttle from one hiding place to another, always cautious, always aware. But they do not seem troubled by the rain or the fog, only go about their small lives in the shallow water, and the figure feels a kinship with them, a shared existence in this quiet, gray world. The rain is steady, unchanging, and it has been falling for so long now that it seems as though it has always been falling, as though the world has always been this way, wrapped in fog and rain and soft gray light. The figure walks through it, part of it, no longer thinking about the rain or the fog or the walking, only moving, breathing, existing in this moment that stretches out in all directions, endless and calm. There is a sound of a bell somewhere in the distance, a slow, steady tolling that carries across the water and through the fog. The figure stops to listen, counting the tolls without meaning to, hearing each one rise and fade before the next one comes. The bell rings 10 times, or perhaps 11, and then stops, and the silence that follows is deeper for having been broken, a silence that settles back over the harbor like a blanket, soft and complete. The figure stands listening to the silence, and then begins to walk again. The walkway curves gently, following the natural shape of the harbor, and the figure follows the curve, moving at the same unhurried pace. There are more boats along this section, some tied to posts and some resting in slips built of weathered wood. The slips are old, their supports darkened by years of water and weather, and small barnacles cling to them below the waterline. The boats rock gently in their places, moving with the slight swell of the water, and the ropes that hold them creak softly, a sound that is barely audible above the rain, but present nonetheless, another small voice in the quiet symphony of the harbor. There is a building just ahead, larger than the others, with a sign hanging above the door that the figure cannot read in the dim light and the fog. The building is dark, its windows shuttered, and there is no sign of life within. The figure walks past it slowly, glancing at the door and the windows, seeing only darkness and the reflection of the fog in the glass, and then continues along the walkway, leaving the building behind. The path is narrower here, with the water very close on one side and a low wall on the other. The wall is made of stone, old and crumbling in places, and small plants grow in the cracks, their leaves wet and dark. The figure trails a hand along the top of the wall, feeling the roughness of the stone and the dampness left by the rain, and walks slowly, carefully along the narrow path. The fog moves in strange ways, sometimes lifting slightly to reveal more of the harbor, and sometimes settling lower until even the water at the edge of the walkway is obscured. The figure watches these changes without trying to understand them, seeing them as part of the natural rhythm of the night, no more surprising or significant than the rise and fall of the tide or the coming and going of the rain. There is a place where the walkway widens into a small area paved with flat stones, and in the center of this area stands a single tree, old and twisted, its branches bare of leaves. The tree is dark against the gray sky, and rain drips from its branches onto the stones below, creating small puddles that spread and merge. The figure walks around the tree, looking up at its branches, seeing the way they reach out in all directions, as if searching for something, though what they might be searching for is impossible to say. The tree stands alone, patient and enduring, and the figure feels a kind of respect for it, this living thing that has weathered so many storms and so many quiet nights like this one. Beyond the tree, the walkway narrows again and continues along the waterfront. The figure follows it, moving past more boats, more buildings, more stacks of crates and coils of rope. Everything is wet with rain, everything is soft in the fog, and everything is quiet, so quiet that the sound of footsteps seems to echo, though there is nothing for them to echo against. Only the open air and the water and the endless fog. The rain falls on the water with a sound like breathing, a soft, rhythmic sound that rises and falls in a pattern that is almost but not quite regular. The figure listens to this sound, matching breath to its rhythm, breathing in as the rain falls, breathing out as the sound fades, and walking in time with this slow, gentle breathing of the harbor. There is a bench along the walkway, simple and weathered, and the figure sits on it, lowering down slowly and resting there, hands on knees, looking out at the water. The bench is damp, but the dampness does not matter, only adds to the feeling of being part of the rain and the fog and the night. The figure sits without moving, watching the water, seeing the way the rain makes patterns on its surface, the way the fog drifts across it in slow, silent waves. Time passes, though it is impossible to say how much. The rain continues, the fog continues, and the figure sits, breathing slowly, listening to the quiet sounds of the harbor. A boat creaks somewhere nearby. A rope slaps gently against a mast, and the foghorn sounds again, far away, its low note rolling across the water and fading into the fog. The figure listens to these sounds without thinking about them, letting them wash over and through, becoming part of the stillness. After a time, the figure stands, slowly, feeling the stiffness that comes from sitting in the cool air, and begins to walk again. The walkway stretches ahead, and the figure follows it, moving at the same slow pace, passing the same kinds of things as before, boats and buildings and posts and ropes. Everything is familiar now, or perhaps everything has always been familiar, and the walking is a kind of meditation, a way of being present in the world without needing to understand or change anything about it. The buildings along the waterfront are all dark now, their windows black, their doors closed and locked for the night. The figure passes them without curiosity, seeing them as part of the landscape, no more remarkable than the stones underfoot or the fog in the air. The rain continues to fall, soft and steady, and the figure walks through it, feeling the dampness, hearing the gentle sound it makes on the water and the stones and the roofs of the buildings. There's a place where the walkway passes beneath a low overhang, a shelter of sorts, built against the wall of a building. The figure stops here, standing in the shelter, feeling the sudden absence of rain on face and shoulders. The overhang is small, offering only a few feet of dry space, but it is enough to create a sense of difference, a boundary between the rain and the absence of rain. The figure stands there for a moment, listening to the rain fall just beyond the edge of the overhang, and then steps out again into the open air, feeling the rain resume its gentle touch. The walkway continues, and the figure continues with it, moving deeper into the fog, deeper into the quiet. The harbor is vast, or feels vast in the fog, and the walking seems endless, though it is not, only slow and measured and calm. There is no destination, no endpoint that must be reached, only the walking itself, the simple act of moving through the gray world of the harbor at night. The water beside the walkway is dark and still, barely moving, and the surface is smooth except for the disturbances made by the rain. Each drop creates a small circle of ripples that spreads outward and vanishes, and there are so many drops falling, so many circles forming and fading, that the surface seems alive with movement, though it is a slow, gentle movement that requires no effort and creates no sound beyond the softest whisper. The figure walks on, passing a small rowboat that has been pulled up onto the stones and turned upside down. The boat is old, its paint peeling, and it rests on wooden blocks that have sunk slightly into the ground from years of bearing its weight. The figure pauses to look at it, seeing the way the rain has darkened the wood, the way the fog has softened its outline, and then continues walking. There is a stretch of the walkway where the stones give way to dirt, a narrow path that winds between buildings and leads toward the water. The figure follows this path, feeling the dirt soft and muddy beneath each step, hearing the slight squelch of wet earth. The path is short, emerging after only a few yards back onto the cobblestones of the main walkway, and the figure returns to the familiar sound of footsteps on stone. The fog is everywhere now, so thick that it seems to have substance, as if it could be touched or held. The figure walks through it, feeling it cool against skin, seeing it swirl slightly with each movement, each breath. The world has been reduced to this small space, this bubble of gray that moves with the figure, revealing only what is immediately ahead and hiding everything else in soft, forgiving obscurity. The rain continues, patient and endless, and the sound it makes is like the sound of time itself, slow and steady and unstoppable. The figure walks through it, part of it, no longer separate from the rain or the fog or the quiet night, only another element in the stillness, another presence in the gray. There is a boat ahead, larger than the others, a fishing vessel with a high bow and a cabin amidships. The boat is dark, its windows shuttered, and it sits low in the water as if heavy with some invisible cargo. The figure walks past it slowly, looking at the name painted on the bow, though the letters are too worn to read clearly in the fog. The boat rocks gently, and water slaps softly against its hull, and then the figure has passed it, and the boat is behind, lost in the fog. The walkway turns slightly, leading toward a place where the buildings end and there is only the low stone wall and the water beyond. The figure follows the turn, moving at the same slow pace, and comes to a place where the wall is broken, stones fallen away to leave a gap through which the water is visible, dark and calm. The figure stands at the gap, looking down at the water, seeing the reflection of the gray sky and the faint movement of the surface, and then continues along the walkway. The night is deep and quiet, and the rain falls softly, and the fog drifts in its slow, silent way. The figure walks through it all, part of the stillness, part of the quiet, moving without hurry, without purpose, only walking, because that is what there is to do, because the night invites it, and the rain permits it, and the fog embraces it. The walkway stretches on, and the figure follows, one step at a time, slow and steady and calm, breathing the cool air, listening to the rain, watching the fog, and feeling nothing but the gentle peace of this quiet, gray world. There is a section of the walkway where old pilings rise from the water, their tops worn smooth by years of ropes and weather. The pilings stand in a row, marking what might once have been a longer dock that has since been removed or fallen away, and now they serve only as perches for gulls during the day, and as markers in the fog at night. The figure walks past them slowly, counting them without meaning to, seeing each one emerge from the fog and then disappear behind as the walking continues. The rain has a smell to it now, or perhaps the smell has been there all along, and is only now being noticed. It is the smell of wet stone and salt water, of wood that has been soaked and dried and soaked again countless times, of seaweed and rain and the deep mineral scent of the sea. The figure breathes it in, finding comfort in the familiarity of it, in the way it speaks of this place and this night and all the nights like this one that have come before. Along the waterfront, there are small gaps between the buildings where narrow alleyways lead away from the water into the town beyond. The figure passes these alleyways without turning into them. only glancing at the darkness that fills them, seeing the faint shapes of walls and doorways, and the occasional pile of crates or barrels stacked against a building. The alleyways hold their own mysteries, their own quiet stories, but tonight they are not part of the path, and the figure moves past them, keeping to the waterfront, keeping to the rain and the fog and the gentle presence of the harbor. There is a place where a small stream runs down from the town and empties into the harbor, the water flowing beneath the walkway through a stone culvert. The figure stops on the small bridge that crosses the stream, looking down at the dark water as it moves from shadow into the harbor, carrying with it leaves and small twigs and the rain that has fallen on the town. The stream makes a soft rushing sound as it flows, and the figure stands listening to it, hearing how it blends with the sound of the rain and the gentle movement of the harbor water. The bridge is old, its stones fitted together with mortar that has crumbled away in places, and small plants grow in the gaps, their roots finding purchase in the cracks. The railing is made of iron, rusted and rough beneath a hand that trails along it, and the rain has made it slick and cold to the touch. The figure stands on the bridge for a long moment, looking down at the stream, and then up at the fog that hangs over the harbor, and then continues across and back onto the walkway on the other side. The boats are fewer along this stretch, and the buildings are smaller, simpler structures that might be storage sheds or workshops, rather than shops or homes. Their walls are made of weathered wood, and their roofs are covered with old shingles that have curled at the edges from years of sun and rain. The figure passes them slowly, seeing the way the rain runs down their walls in small rivulets, the way the fog softens their outlines until they seem like shapes drawn in charcoal on gray paper. There is a stack of lobster traps beside one of the buildings, piled high and covered with a net that has been weighted down with stones. The traps are old, their wooden frames dark with age, and small pieces of old bait still cling to some of them, though the smell of it has long since been washed away by the rain. The figure pauses to look at the traps, seeing the craftsmanship in their construction, the careful joinery and the way the netting has been woven to create the chambers and the entrance. They are tools of a trade that has been practiced here for generations, and they speak of patience and skill, and the slow, steady work of harvesting the sea. The walkway continues, winding along the edge of the harbor in a path that seems to have no end, or perhaps an end that is always just beyond the reach of sight, hidden in the fog. The figure follows it without question, without thought of where it might lead or how far it might go, only walking, breathing, existing in the soft gray world of the harbor at night. The rain is lighter now, so light that it is barely more than mist, and the fog has thickened in response, as if the moisture that was falling from the sky has simply chosen to remain suspended in the air instead. The figure walks through this mist fog slowly, feeling it cool against face and hands, seeing how it clings to clothes and hair, leaving small droplets that catch what little light there is and gleam faintly before being absorbed. There is a lamppost ahead, one of the old-fashioned kind with a curved arm and a glass-enclosed lamp that burns with a steady, warm light. The light does not reach far into the fog, only creates a small circle of illumination around the post itself, but it is enough to see by, and the figure walks toward it, drawn by the warmth of the light even though there is no warmth to be felt, only seen. Standing beneath the lamp, the figure looks up at it, seeing the way the fog swirls around the glass enclosure, the way the light itself seems softened and diffused by the moisture in the air. There are small insects gathered around the light, drawn to it as insects always are, and they circle slowly, their small bodies casting tiny shadows on the fog. The figure watches them for a moment, seeing their endless circling, their simple devotion to the light, and then looks away, back to the walkway that continues on into the fog. Beyond the lamppost, the walkway passes close to a small boat that has been pulled up onto a slipway, its hull propped on supports while someone works on it. Tools lie scattered on the ground nearby, a plane, a hammer, a can of paint, all left out in the rain, all slowly gathering moisture. The boat itself is half painted, one side bright with fresh color, and the other still showing the old, faded paint beneath. The figure looks at it, seeing the work half done, the project paused until morning or until the rain stops, and feels a kinship with the boat, with its state of incompleteness, its patience and waiting. The rain continues its gentle fall, and the fog continues its slow drift, and the figure continues walking, moving past the boat and back onto the main walkway, where the cobblestones are smooth and familiar beneath each step. The harbor spreads out to the left, vast and dark and nearly invisible, and the figure walks beside it, companionable in the quiet, comfortable in the grayness. There is a sound of water lapping against stone somewhere nearby, a soft, rhythmic sound that speaks of the tide moving, of the slow rise and fall of the sea. The figure listens to it, trying to determine whether the tide is coming in or going out. But the sound alone is not enough to tell, and it does not matter anyway. Only adds another layer to the quiet music of the harbor, the rain, the fog, the water, the occasional creak of a boat or cry of a gull settling for the night. The walkway passes a place where old bollards stand in a row, thick posts of iron sunk deep into the stone and used for tying off large boats. The bollards are dark with rust and age, and old ropes hang from some of them, frayed and useless now, but still present, still clinging to their purpose, even though that purpose has long since passed. The figure walks among them, touching one with a hand, feeling the roughness of the rusted metal and the dampness left by the rain, and then continues on. There is a building ahead with a small porch that extends out over the water, supported by wooden pilings that have been darkened by years of immersion. The porch is enclosed with a railing, and there are benches along the railing where people might sit during the day to watch the boats come and go. Now, in the rain and the fog and the deep night, the porch is empty, and the benches are wet, and everything is quiet. The figure walks past the porch, slowly, looking at it, seeing it as a place of rest and observation, a place where the line between land and water becomes blurred and uncertain. The fog has settled lower now, hugging the surface of the water so closely that the harbor seems to disappear entirely, becoming only a presence, a sound, a feeling, rather than something that can be seen. The figure walks along the edge of this invisible water, guided by the walkway and by the sound of small waves lapping at the stones, and feels no concern about the loss of visibility, only a deepening of the quiet, a thickening of the peace. There is a place where the walkway branches, one path continuing along the waterfront, and another leading inland toward the town. The figure pauses at this branching, considering for a moment, and then continues along the waterfront path, drawn by the water and the fog and the sense of endlessness that the harbor offers. The inland path disappears quickly into the fog, and the figure does not look back at it, only moves forward, keeping to the familiar rhythm of walking beside the water. The rain is constant, unchanging, and it has been falling for so long that the figure can no longer remember what it is like to be dry, what it feels like to stand in air that is not filled with moisture. But this does not trouble the mind, only seems natural, as if the rain is simply the way the world is meant to be, and being dry would be the strange thing, the unusual state. There are more boats along this stretch, small vessels tied to posts or resting in slips, and each one rocks gently with the movement of the water. Some have covers over their cockpits, canvas or plastic, stretched tight and tied down to keep the rain out, and some are open, slowly filling with rainwater that will need to be bailed out when morning comes. The figure walks past them slowly, seeing each one, noting the small differences between them, a name painted on a hull, a coil of rope in a particular way, a fender hanging at a certain height, and then moving on to the next. The walkway is darker here, with no lamps to light the way, and the figure moves more slowly, feeling the path with each step, listening to the sound of the cobblestones beneath each footfall. The darkness is not complete, for there is always some faint light, even in the deepest fog, some ambient glow that comes from nowhere in particular, and illuminates nothing clearly, but is enough to suggest shapes, to hint at edges to make walking possible. There is a bench along the walkway, and the figure sits on it, resting there in the darkness and the rain and the fog. The bench is simple, made of wood that has been worn smooth by weather and by the many people who have sat here over the years. The figure sits without moving, hands resting on the bench on either side, breathing slowly, listening to the rain and the water and the deep quiet of the harbor at night. Time passes, uncounted and uncountable. The rain continues, the fog continues, and the figure sits, part of the stillness, part of the quiet. There is no thought of the past or the future, no awareness of anything beyond this moment, this bench, this rain, this fog. The world has contracted to this small space, this bubble of peace, and nothing else matters, nothing else exists. Eventually, the figure stands, slowly, and begins to walk again. The walkway continues ahead, and the figure follows it, moving at the same slow pace as before, perhaps even slower now, as if the sitting has deepened the calm, has slowed the rhythm of movement even further. The rain falls, the fog drifts, and the figure walks, breathing, existing, being present in the soft gray world. There is a small chapel along the waterfront, its stone walls dark and its single window glowing faintly with candlelight from within. The figure passes the chapel slowly, hearing nothing from inside, seeing only the faint glow of the candles and the outline of the window against the darker stone. The chapel is a quiet place, a place of contemplation and peace, and it fits well into the landscape of the harbor, another element of the stillness, another presence in the gray. The walkway curves gently, and the figure follows the curve, passing more buildings, more boats, more small details that emerge from the fog and then disappear behind. Everything is familiar now, or perhaps everything has always been familiar, and the walking has become a kind of meditation, a practice that requires no thought, only movement, only presence. The water beside the walkway is dark and calm, and the rain falls on it gently, making small sounds that blend together into a soft whisper. The figure walks beside the water, listening to this whisper, feeling the coolness of the air, smelling the salt and the rain and the wet wood, and feeling nothing but the gentle peace of the moment. There is a place where the walkway passes beneath a low overhang, a shelter built against the side of a building, and the figure pauses there, standing in the dry space beneath the overhang and listening to the rain fall just beyond. The rain sounds different here, sharper, more distinct, and the figure listens to it for a long moment before stepping out again into the gentle wetness. The fog has grown thicker still, and now the world has shrunk to only what is immediately around the stones underfoot, the edge of the water nearby, the vague shapes of buildings and boats that appear and disappear in the grayness. The figure walks through this narrow world slowly, carefully, placing each step with attention, listening to the sounds that mark the boundaries of the visible space. There are gulls somewhere in the fog, settled on posts or boats or the water itself, and they call out occasionally soft sounds that carry through the fog and then fade away. The figure listens to these calls, hearing in them the voice of the harbor, the sound of the creatures that make this place their home. The calls are not urgent or alarmed, only quiet communications, birds speaking to one another in the darkness, marking their positions, confirming their presence. The walkway continues, and the figure continues with it, moving deeper into the fog, deeper into the quiet. The rain falls, the water moves, and everything is soft and gray and peaceful. There is no destination, no end point, only the walking itself, only the gentle rhythm of movement through the still night. There is a place where old anchors lie piled beside the walkway, massive pieces of iron that speak of larger boats and deeper water. The anchors are rusted and weathered, their flukes worn smooth in places from dragging across the bottom of the harbor. The figure pauses to look at them, seeing the weight and the solidity of them, the way they rest heavily on the stones, and then continues on. The rain is so light now that it is hardly rain at all, only a dampness in the air, a coolness that settles on skin and clothes. The fog has absorbed the rain, taken it into itself, and now the two are inseparable, a single element that fills the air and wraps the world in its gentle embrace. The figure walks on, slowly, steadily, breathing the damp air, listening to the quiet sounds of the harbor, feeling the peace of the night settle deeper with each step. The walkway stretches ahead into the fog, and the figure follows it, one step at a time, patient and calm, part of the stillness, part of the endless gray.